Dear students, this is time that we discuss Virginia Woolf, the foremost modernist of the 20th century. And she was a famous member of the Bloomsbury group of intellectuals. And there are a number of novels written by her like Mrs. Dalloway, To the Lighthouse, Orlando, a Biography. And she is also a popular orator and essayist. And she is very popular for her book-length essay, A Room of Concern. And there is a very popular saying in the book, a woman must have money and a room of her own if she wants to write fiction. And this book has been considered as the Bible for the feminists. And Woolf was a lady who suffered mental bouts during her life. And she was institutionalized also for a brief time. Even though she got married with Leonard Woolf, she committed suicide at the age of 59 by putting stones into her jacket and jumping into the water. She was drowned to death. Virginia Woolf and James Joyce were very interestingly born in the same year and died in the same year. Both born in 1882 and both died in 1941. And Virginia died by committing suicide. And as far as James Joyce is concerned, he died due to natural causes. And we have discussed the novels of Virginia in other videos. And in this video, we discussed the biographies written by Virginia. The biographies are also written in the format of novels. And starting with Orlando, a Biography, it was written as a novel and published in 1928. And it describes the tumultuous relationship between Woolf and her lover Vita Sackville West. The lesbian relationship between Virginia Woolf and Vita Sackville West, who was a close friend of Virginia, and they maintained a lesbian relationship for almost 10 years. And after that also they continued to remain together. Vita Sackville West was an important member of the Bloomsbury group of writers. She was a poet and a novelist. A few of her poems were published in the Georgian poetry. In the 5th volume of Georgian poetry, a few of her poems were published. And she has got a very popular collection of poems, Orchards and Vineyards. And she is also popular for her novels, like Edwardians. Edwardians was written in the format of a Bildungsroman. And the other important novel written by her was All Passions Spent. And these are the last words of Milton's play Samson Against Us. Milton's closet drama, Samson Against Us, ends with the words, all passions spent. And interestingly, the title of Vita Sackville West novel is All Passions Spent. Vita Sackville West and Virginia Woolf were friends. Sackville West was 10 years younger to Virginia. Virginia was born in 1882, whereas Vita Sackville West was born in 1892, 10 years younger to Virginia. And Virginia died in 1941, and Vita Sackville West died only in 1962. And they were very close friends. And the biography of Vita Sackville West is presented in a fictitious manner in the novel Orlando, a Biography. And when we go into the plot of Orlando, we come to find Orlando living a life for almost 300 years. So it is a meta-historical work. So a meta-historical work. And it speaks about the life of a person for 300 years. Orlando was born during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. And he worked as a page in the court of Queen Elizabeth. And he was also a favorite of Queen Elizabeth. And after the death of Queen Elizabeth, she gave him some postings also, and Orlando fell in love with a girl named Sasha. And Sasha was an unfaithful girl, and she left him and went to Russia. And after all, Orlando started working in various positions. And during the time of Charles II, during the Restoration period, he continued to live for almost 300 years. So the beginning is 1608 and the ending is 1928, covering almost 320 years. During the time of Charles II, he was appointed as ambassador to Constantinople. And he went to work in Constantinople. And while engaged in busy work in Constantinople, he went to sleep. And he could not be waken up. He continued to remain sleeping for a few days. And when he woke up, he identified that he was transmorphed into a woman. He had become a woman. A male has changed to a female. And what was he to do? He left Constantinople, joined with a gypsy group, and remained with them as a female. And so continued with the gypsies for a period, and finally returned home, alternately changing as a male and as a female. In disguise, she appeared in her own place. And formerly he was in love with another lady. He was in love with the Archduchess named Harriet. While working in the Elizabethan period, he felt attracted to the Archduchess Harriet. And he meets Harriet once again. And this time Harriet has also transmorphed into a male. And Harriet has now become Archduke Harry. Formerly, she was called Archduchess Harriet. Now, she has been changed into a man. And when Orlando has turned to become a female, the Archduke Harry proposes. But Orlando refuses and remains there in his hometown and fights a legal case and wins in the case. And Orlando becomes able to get his property back. And during his early days onwards, he was found writing a poem, a long poem. It was called The Oak Tree. And during the 18th century, he met Alexander Pope and Nick Green, another critic, Nicholas Green. Formerly Nicholas Green told him that his poem was not worth reading and he wanted to change the structure of the poem. Nicholas Green. And Nicholas Green is also introduced here as a man continuing to live for a long time. And Alexander Pope is also introduced in the course of the novel. Pope instructs Orlando in writing the poem. And the critic Nick Green also gives a few advices to Orlando, and Orlando continues to write the poem, The Oak Tree, but is not in a position of completing it. It takes him a long time to complete the poem. And in the course of her life, she gets married with a sea captain named Marmaduke Banthorpe Shelmerdine. She gets married with a sea captain named Marmaduke Banthorpe Shelmerdine, and his identity, his sexual identity was also not confirmed. And it was not sure whether he was man or lady. Anyhow, Orlando got married with the sea captain Marmaduke Banthorpe Shelmerdine, and Shelmerdine appreciated her talent in writing the poem, and Orlando spends her time completing the poem. And say in 1928, Orlando became able to publish the poem, and she wins a prize also for the poem. And towards the end of the poem, Orlando is waiting for her husband, Marmaduke Banthorpe Shelmerdine, to come to appreciate her. and she suddenly finds an airplane hovering around her and the face of Marmaduke Bonthrop Shelmerdine. And Marmaduke Bonthrop so comes down from the plane, and when he comes down, a bird was found hovering around his head, and Orlando is found shouting, "A goose, that it is a wild goose." And the novel comes to its end at the stroke of midnight on October 11, 1928. The novel ends on the midnight stroke of 12 on October 11, 1928. Actually, it was the day the novel was given for publication. So it is a very interesting biography written by Virginia on Vita Sackville West. Vita Sackville West was the lesbian friend of Virginia, who was very beautiful, strong, and courageous like a man. And Virginia maintained a lesbian relationship for the lady with help for almost 10 years. And the opinion of Nigel Nicholson. Vita Sackville West's son, Nigel Nicholson, after reading the book, maintained that it was the longest and most charming love letter. He had a great appreciation. The son of Vita Sackville West had a great appreciation for the novel Orlando. And he identified that Orlando was actually his mother, Vita Sackville West. And he maintained that the novel was the most charming love letter in literature, the longest and the most charming love letter in English literature. And after Orlando, a biography, we come to find another biography, and it is Flesh, a biography. Flesh was actually the dog owned by Elizabeth Barrett Browning, the wife of Robert Browning, who was also a poetess. Elizabeth Barrett Browning. During her last days, as she was suffering from tuberculosis, she lived almost a lonely life, and she had a friend named Flesh. Actually, Flesh was a dog. UGC once asked the question, the protagonist of Flesh, a biography, is a dog. Who is the protagonist of the novel Flesh, a biography written by Virginia? It's actually a dog loved by Barrett Browning, Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And Elizabeth Barrett Browning produced 2 poems also on the dog. The first poem was To Flesh My Dog, and the second poem was Flesh or Fanis. And from these 2 poems, Virginia Woolf got the material for her biography, Flesh, a biography. Actually, in the biography, she speaks about the intimate relation between Elizabeth Barrett Browning and the dog Flesh. Once while shopping, Barrett Browning lost the dog, and the dog was stolen by some criminals, and she paid 6 guineas, in fact, to release the dog. And after all, the dog was there attending the marriage function of her servant named Lily Wilson. Normally, when there is a dog in the home, it will be attending the various functions. It will also be a part of the family. And Flesh was a close friend of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And the story of Flesh is described by Virginia in her biography, Flesh, a biography. And it is written by her in 1933. She also produced another biography called Roger Fry, a biography. And Roger Fry was a friend who was also there in the Bloomsbury group of writers. And he was a painter, he was a critic, and he was also a friend of Virginia. And on his death, Virginia produced a biography, Roger Fry, a biography, and it was produced in 1940. And these are the 3 biographies written by Virginia: Orlando, a biography, Flesh, a biography, and Roger Fry, a biography. And we will see again with another video, and thank you for the time being.